The first time she said it, she didn't even look at me. She just stood in the hallway, a grocery bag slipping slightly from her wrist, her voice low enough to almost vanish in the hum of the old ceiling light. You make the air between us feel different. I didn't know what to say. Maybe she didn't expect me to. Her name was Elena, and she lived one floor above mine. 40-something, quiet, composed in a way that made noise feel like a kind of sin. She wasn't the kind of woman you notice because she's trying to be noticed. It was the opposite. The world just leaned closer when she passed through it. When I moved into the building, we'd only shared polite nods, the kind you give when you're not sure if the other person remembers your face. But lately, the silences between those nods had started to feel aware. That evening, the air smelled faintly of rain and her perfume, soft, not floral, something like cedar and faint citrus. She was balancing her keys, a folder, and that grocery bag that seemed too heavy for her to carry alone. I stepped forward without thinking. Let me. Her hand brushed mine as I steadied the bag. Just that, a brush. But her fingers lingered half a second too long. Her skin was cool at first, then warm, the kind of warmth that stays even after contact ends. She drew her hand back quickly. Thank you? Her tone was formal, practiced. But she didn't move away. We stood there, either of us making the next move. The hallway light flickered, and in that uneven glow, I saw the faintest tremor in her breath, the rise and fall of her chest like she'd forgotten what to do with it. I tried to look anywhere but at her, but my eyes kept finding their way back, the small line between her brows when she was thinking, the way she half smiled like she was apologizing for something unsaid. You're new to this building, right? She asked finally, adjusting her hair though it didn't need fixing. Almost a year, I said. You're upstairs. She nodded. I hear you sometimes. My heart stuttered. Hear me? Her smile deepened just slightly. You play music late. Guitar? I nodded. Only when I can't sleep. That's often, she said, eyes flicking up, holding mine a fraction too long. There was something about the way she looked at me, not flirtatious, not deliberate, but like she was trying not to. That restraint was what made it impossible to ignore. Behind her, her apartment door was slightly open, a triangle of warm lamplight spilling across the floor. Inside I caught a glimpse, a bookshelf, a glass of wine, the edge of a chair angled toward an open window. The kind of place that felt lived in, not shown off. She noticed my glance, and her voice softened. It's nothing special. I wanted to tell her it was, because she was in it. But instead I said, it looks peaceful. Her eyes searched my face then, as if weighing whether to step back or forward. For a heartbeat, the air between us was so still it felt alive. Then somewhere down the hall, a door slammed, sharp and sudden. She flinched, almost imperceptibly. The moment broke. Elena reached for her keys, fingers fumbling for a second. Good night, Noah. My name sounded different in her voice, careful, like she'd practiced saying it before. Good night, I said. She turned toward her door, paused once, her shoulder angled toward me. Then softly, without facing me. You make the air between us feel different. The door closed. And I stood there, still holding her grocery bag, wondering if she knew she'd left that air inside me too. It had been a week since the hallway. 7 days where I'd caught myself listening for her footsteps on the stairs, pretending not to. I told myself it was just curiosity, the way you replay a strange moment to see if it still feels real. But every time I passed her door, I slowed down, just slightly, as if the air there really was different. Then one evening, I saw her again. She was sitting alone at the small cafe across from the building, reading from a weathered book. The rain outside blurred the windows, and her reflection shimmered beside her like a second version of her, one less sure, more tired. I hesitated at the door too long. She noticed. Her eyes lifted, calm but expectant, like she'd been waiting for me to decide. You're going to stand out there forever? She asked when I stepped inside. I smiled, rubbing the back of my neck. Just waiting to see if you'd wave first. I don't wave, she said softly, closing her book. Sit. The cafe smelled of cinnamon and rain-damp wood. Her coat was draped over the chair beside her, and the sleeve brushed against my knee when I sat. She looked at me, not directly, but enough to make me aware of every inch between us. You live alone? She asked suddenly. I nodded. You? Most of the time, she said, tracing the rim of her cup. My daughter's grown. My ex-husband lives in Boston. She said it without bitterness, just quiet fact. Still, there was something in her voice, a small break she didn't patch over quickly enough. I didn't press. I just said, I thought you'd have someone. That made her laugh once, short and surprised. I do. Myself. And that's already complicated enough. Her words should have ended the conversation, but the silence that followed didn't feel like an ending. It felt like a pause waiting to be crossed. She asked about my music, and I told her it helped me breathe on the nights that felt too heavy. I didn't mention that lately. I'd started writing songs I couldn't finish, ones that began with her voice and ended in static. When she leaned forward to hear me better, her hair brushed my hand on the table. She didn't move it away right away. Neither did I. It was such a small thing, her hair, soft, carrying that faint cedar scent again, but my pulse betrayed me. She must have felt it, because she looked at me then, really looked, her eyes darker than before. That night, she said quietly. I shouldn't have said that. I'm glad you did. Her breath caught, the faintest shift in her throat. You don't know what you're saying. Maybe not. But you meant it. She looked down, smiling in a way that wasn't amusement at all. You're too young to notice these things. And you're too certain I shouldn't, I said. Her hand rested on the table, fingers brushing mine, a movement so slight it could have been accidental, but it wasn't. For a second, the rain outside grew louder. The cafe emptier. The space between our hands warmer. Then she stood slowly, her chair scraping against the floor. Thank you for the company, she said, reaching for her coat. Before I could answer, she placed her hand lightly on my shoulder, steady, deliberate. You make things complicated, she whispered. And though she left right after, her touch stayed, a weight I didn't want to shake off. It happened on a Thursday. Late afternoon light filtered through her window, golden and too soft for the thoughts I was having. Elena had asked me to help her move a few boxes, books mostly, old papers, fragments of another life she said she didn't need anymore. I told myself it was a favor. But the way my pulse reacted every time her sleeve brushed mine told a different story. Her apartment smelled faintly of vanilla and paper dust, the kind of warmth that made you forget the hour. Careful, she said as I lifted a stack. That one's heavier than it looks. So am I said before I could stop myself. She gave me a look, not annoyed, but too aware. You shouldn't say things like that. I shouldn't, I said. But I think them. A silence. The kind that lingers long enough to become something else entirely. We ended up sitting on the floor, half surrounded by her life in boxes. She poured tea, her movements precise, graceful. A drop of steam curled between us. I used to think, she said slowly, that loneliness was a choice. That if I just stayed busy enough, I'd stop noticing it. I looked at her hands, steady, elegant, but holding the cup too tightly. Did it work? She smiled faintly. No. It just made the silence louder. The way she said it made my chest tighten. I wanted to reach out, but I didn't. Not yet. Then the knock came. Sharp. Too sudden. She froze. The tension in her shoulders made her seem younger for a moment, uncertain. Through the door, a voice called. Elena? You in there? Her neighbor, Mrs. Keller, the one who talked too much in the elevator. Elena's eyes widened, and she mouthed, Don't move. I nodded, sitting very still, the air between us thick with something dangerously alive. She opened the door halfway, blocking the view with her body. I'm fine, just sorting things. The older woman chatted briefly, oblivious. Elena laughed once, but her voice was slightly too high. When she finally closed the door, she leaned against it, exhaling. I was still on the floor, watching her, the way her hand stayed on the doorknob as if holding herself steady. Her eyes met mine. Neither of us spoke. When she walked toward me again, something in the air shifted, like gravity had picked a side. "You should probably go," she said softly, but she didn't sound sure. "I should," I whispered. "Do you want me to?" Her breath caught. "That's not fair." She knelt beside me to grab a box, her shoulder brushing my arm. The contact was nothing, and everything. The warmth of her skin set off a quiet storm in me. We were inches apart. Her hair slipped over her cheek, brushing mine. Neither of us moved. I could hear her breathing, uneven, careful. My own matched it without trying. She looked at my mouth, then away, then back again. "I can't," she whispered. "I didn't ask you to," I said, though every nerve in me wanted to. She closed her eyes, like she needed to hide from something she'd already decided to feel. When she stood, her hand grazed my face, an accidental caress that lasted too long to be an accident. "I told you," she murmured, almost trembling now. "You make things complicated." And as I watched her walk toward the window, light spilling over her like it belonged there, I realized she was right, but neither of us wanted simple anymore. It started with rain again. Not the gentle kind this time. This was the kind that shook windows, turned streetlights into blurry ghosts. I hadn't planned to see her that night. I told myself I was just checking if the leak in the hallway ceiling was still dripping. But somehow, my hand knocked on her door. She opened it wearing a loose sweater, sleeves rolled to her elbows. Her hair was tied back, a few damp strands clinging to her neck. "You'll catch cold," she said, stepping aside. "I wasn't planning to be here." "I know." Her voice was soft, but there was something in it, something that said she'd been expecting me anyway. The apartment was dim, warm with lamplight. The rain outside made the world feel far away. She poured me tea again, though neither of us touched it. For a while, we said nothing. The silence wasn't awkward this time, it was taut, waiting. Finally, she sighed, pressing a hand against the windowpane. "I thought avoiding you would help." I swallowed. "Has it?" She turned, meeting my eyes. "No." That word broke something open between us. I took a step closer, close enough to see the faint pulse in her throat. "Elena," I started, but she shook her head. "Don't," she whispered. "You don't understand what this would cost me." "I do. I just don't care." Her eyes flashed, not with anger, but something deeper, something like fear dressed as control. "You think this is simple," she said. "You think wanting is enough." "No," I said quietly. "I think pretending isn't." She closed her eyes. When she opened them again, her guard had cracks. I reached up, brushing a strand of hair from her cheek. My fingers lingered, not daring, just learning the shape of her hesitation. Her breath shivered. "You shouldn't." "Then tell me to stop." But she didn't. The room felt smaller now, air thick with every word we hadn't said. She took a slow step forward until her sweater brushed my chest. I could feel the warmth of her even through the fabric, her heartbeat quick and uneven. "I've spent years keeping everything orderly," she said, her voice trembling between defiance and confession. "Then you move in, and suddenly I can't breathe right." I smiled, not out of pride, out of recognition. "You make the air between us feel different," I said. Her lips parted, a soft, involuntary sound escaping, not quite a word. She looked up at me then, eyes unguarded, luminous. And for one suspended heartbeat, we both leaned in, gravity, breath, everything pulling us closer. The rain thundered against the glass. Her hand rose, fingers brushing my jaw, thumb trembling slightly as if even touch was too much. I could taste her breath, tea, rain, something warm and human. Then a knock. Sharp. Urgent. We both froze. "Elena?" A voice called through the door, male, familiar. "You left your lights on downstairs." Her hand fell away. She exhaled, breaking the spell, stepping back though every movement looked like it hurt. I can't, she whispered again. But her eyes said not yet. For 3 days she didn't answer her door. I told myself it didn't matter, that what almost happened in the rain was a line we'd both agreed not to cross. But her silence filled the building like static, a low hum I couldn't escape. On the 4th night, I heard her voice again. Not in person, through the wall. Muffled at first, then clearer. No, I don't think it's appropriate. A pause. The faint clink of glass. He's younger. It's already complicated enough. My chest went tight. I shouldn't have listened, but I couldn't move. When the silence returned, I realized I was standing there barefoot in the hallway, heart beating too loud, the echo of her voice threading through me like confession and rejection in one breath. The next morning, I saw her in the lobby. She looked surprised to see me, though her hand tightened around the envelope she was holding, some letter she clearly hadn't meant to deliver yet. Elena. Her eyes flicked to the elevator, then back to me. I was just talking about me. Her mouth parted. You heard that? I nodded, every word coming slower than I meant it to. Why does it sound like you regret what didn't ever happen? She drew in a shaky breath, shoulders stiff. Because I do. There was a beat, a hollow, fragile second where either of us blinked. You don't mean that. She stepped closer, her voice lowering. You think you know what this is, Noah. But you don't. You still believe attraction is the same thing as courage. I almost laughed, but it caught somewhere in my throat. And you think fear is the same thing as wisdom. Her eyes flickered, hurt, sharp, but alive. For a moment either of us moved. Then she brushed past me, so close her sleeve grazed my hand. It was like static, a flash of warmth followed by cold air. I turned, catching the faintest scent of her perfume, that same cedar and rain that had become a kind of memory trigger. Elena, I said quietly. Why are you running from something you already feel? She stopped, not turning around. Because someone has to. Later that night, a soft knock came at my door. When I opened it, she was there, no coat, no excuses, just her. I shouldn't be here, she said. But you are. Her hands trembled slightly at her sides. Mrs. Keller saw us that night, she whispered. She's been asking questions. And I told her nothing happened. It didn't, I said. She looked up. But I lied like it had. That admission hit harder than any confession. The air between us shifted, thick, charged. Her voice broke into a whisper. You see? It's already too late. I stepped closer, slow enough for her to stop me. She didn't. Then let it be too late, I said. Her breath hitched, her fingers brushing against mine, a quiet, desperate touch. For the first time, she didn't pull away. The night she came back, the world outside had gone quiet. Even the rain seemed to pause. I opened the door before she could knock twice. She stood there, damp from the mist, her hair loose, her eyes too tired to pretend anymore. I can't stop thinking about it, she said, no greeting, no hesitation. Just truth, raw and trembling. I stepped aside. She walked in like someone crossing a line she'd drawn herself. The room was dim, light pooling in small islands across the floor. Neither of us spoke at first. The silence wasn't empty, it was crowded, with everything we tried not to say. Finally, she whispered, You make me forget who I'm supposed to be. Her words hit with the weight of confession and surrender all at once. I took a slow step closer. Then who are you when you're with me? She almost smiled, but it faltered, caught between wanting and warning. Someone reckless. Someone I promised I'd never be again. I reached out, brushing a wet strand of hair from her face. My fingers hesitated near her temple, then traced down to her jaw. Her eyes closed, breath unsteady. Don't, she whispered. But her face tilted slightly into my hand. We stood so close I could feel the warmth of her breath on my collar. Tell me to stop, I said again, but it came out quieter this time, less a challenge, more a plea. She opened her eyes, searching mine like she was looking for a reason not to. "If I tell you that," she said softly, "I'll mean the opposite." Her hand came up, fingertips grazing my chest, resting over my heartbeat. The small contact felt like a spark in slow motion. Neither of us moved, but everything inside us did. She leaned in, not all the way, just close enough for the air to hum between us. Her lips parted as if to speak, but no words came. I could feel the question in the space between us: do we, or don't we? "I'm scared," she admitted. "So am I said. "But you're supposed to be the brave one. Maybe bravery isn't what this is." "What is it then?" "Being honest," I whispered. That made her eyes soften, and something in her posture finally gave way. Her forehead rested against mine, our breathing sinking without thought. She let out a small, broken laugh, like it hurt to hold it in. "Every time I see you, I start over," she said. I smiled barely. "Then don't stop starting." Her hand slid up to the back of my neck, slow, deliberate. For a heartbeat, we hovered there, right on the edge of something that could undo us both. Then, gently, she pressed her lips to my cheek, not passion, but confession. A touch that said, "I feel it too. But this is how I keep us from falling apart." When she stepped back, the distance felt unbearable, but the air between us was clear, no more pretending. We stood there, breathing the same heavy air, knowing exactly what we'd chosen, not the easy path, not the safe one, just the truth. And for the first time, that was enough. Morning found them both awake before the sun. The night hadn't ended in promises or confessions, just quiet. They'd sat for hours in that still apartment, the storm fading outside while their words faded too, until all that was left was understanding. Now, the light crept gently across the floor, brushing over her hands where they rested near his. Elena watched the glow touch the window pane. "It's strange," she said softly, "how something that felt impossible now feels simple." Noah smiled faintly. "Maybe it was never impossible. Just frightening." She looked at him then, eyes steady but gentler than before. "You should be terrified. I'm older. I overthink everything. I leave half the lights on. I'll probably ask you to remind me what happiness is supposed to look like." He reached over, brushing his thumb along her wrist. "Then I'll remind you. Every day if I have to." Her laugh was quiet, the kind that almost turned into a sigh. They made breakfast together, though neither was really hungry. The kettle whistled, the toast went cold. Every small thing between them felt newly significant, her brushing past him to reach for a mug, his hand finding hers without hesitation this time. She didn't pull away. For the first time, there was no guilt in it. Just warmth. "You still think this is brave?" she asked, glancing over her shoulder. "No," he said. "I think it's real." Her smile was small but sure. "Real is enough." When they sat by the window afterward, the city was quiet beneath the soft gray of morning. The rain had stopped, leaving everything shining and still. Elena leaned back into the chair, and Noah reached over, fingers lacing with hers. She let him. The space between them, once filled with hesitation, now just felt full, of breath, of quiet, of the kind of peace that only comes after a storm. She turned toward him. "You know this won't be easy." "I don't want easy," he said. There was no grand declaration, no need for one. She leaned her head against his shoulder, and he rested his cheek against her hair. The silence that followed wasn't heavy anymore, it was home. After a while, she whispered, almost to herself, "You really do make the air between us feel different." He smiled, tightening his hand around hers. "Then I guess we should keep breathing it." The light shifted again, soft and forgiving, catching the curve of her smile as she looked up at him, eyes clear, no longer afraid. They didn't kiss. They didn't need to. The world around them already had. And in that simple, quiet moment, they both understood, this was where the story stopped pretending and started living.